to my channel. I am Ezreal the Scribe, and I welcome you to my home, my space. This is where the magic happens. No, really, I've spent the last at least 25 years navigating different path workings and spirituality, learning different religions, learning different beliefs and concepts, rites of passage, rituals, all different types of backgrounds, meeting tons of people, tons of teachers. And on this channel, I want to share some experiences that I had, things I've learned, and share the blessings that was blessed to me from my teachers, and to re-gift that as I should, to honor their teachings and to inspire, to not persuade you that what I do is the right way or the wrong way, but truly this is what works for me. But some element of what I bring might inspire you, might resonate with you. So with that said, this topic today that I will be covering is over something that's very known in our society, the left-hand path, the right-hand path, and the unknown middle path. And with that, if you are interested in learning the secrets that I learned, stay tuned. Okay, welcome back. So if you've made it this far, then you are curious, which I appreciate that. And curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. But truthfully, you're curious about, what I'm talking about, the left-hand path, right-hand path. What is that? Left hand, right hand. We got two. All right. So when we talk about spirituality, we talk about, belief systems. There's, really, when it comes down to it, and two path workings. And I come to this conclusion because my father, who studied theology, went to a doctorate school for it. He told me one time, how does he approach people that claim to be atheists, or how do you have a conversation with people that don't believe in anything? And my dad, he, very wise man, came up with two answers. He said, one, you either need help on your path, you need guidance on your path, and you seek external higher celestial forces or lower celestial forces to get that help. That's the right-hand path. Or the left-hand path, which you don't need help. You seek within. Everything comes from within. Everything, all cause and effect happens based on your choices, which goes into many different philosophies. But in this concept of what I'm talking about, it's pretty simple. You either right-hand path, you believe in a higher source or a lower source that guides you, and then the left-hand path, which is, no, I got this, I don't need help. And often there's many subgroups out of this that start, if you really dig deep, you'll start to notice these belief systems start to entwine, and that's the middle path. because and I'll explain about this. So, and this kind of gives you a little clarification of my history. So, starting out in my life, I was raised in a highly Christian family, Southern Baptist, and they were, very strict on religion and belief systems, but it was very educational to them as well, and historical for them, and they passed that on to me. And up until about 17, 18, I was deeply in the Christian church, and then certain things happened to me around that time frame that really made me start questioning things. Well, one, you're at maturity, you start to have more abstract thoughts, more detailed thoughts, and that yearning to know more of what's out there, because I've been following this one path since birth, in a belief system. And Christianity is considered the right-hand path because you look to God, you look to Jesus, you look to the angels, you look to the higher creator, the source, for guidance and for wisdom, and for which is quite beautiful. That, and I respect that. So with that said, when I became 18, I started seeing a lot of bureaucracy with the whole ideology of it. And what I mean by that is that, I started to see how so much is centered around the church and less around the relationship. And what I mean by relationship is your own personal relationship with, a higher source. And I think, that's just like a big thing, because your church is your community. And I always say one of the 4 foundations of life is food, water, shelter, and community. So when you base one of your foundations as the church, that's a big part of your world. But I found sometimes that, it hindered, that idea that your church could be outside in nature, divine creation. It's all around you. If we follow a creator God that created everything, then of course, out in creation. So I started navigating towards that and started looking outside of the church. And it was in 2000 that I came across Wicca, which was fairly new from the 50s, Gerald Gardner. I'm not going to go into history, but it was in Austin, Texas. I met a couple that had created a Alexandrian Gardnerian, more so Alexandrian Wiccan, Celtic Wiccan coven, with the more pulling foundations from Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Germany, different Celtic regions of the European continent. And so I started, studying. And then at that time in Austin, I went to the community college and I took world religions. And, I learned for the first time about where good and evil came from through Zoroastrianism and Zoroaster or Zarathustra, and how their belief was centered around that the essence of life is this big ball of fire within each of us, and that's a spark given by Creator. And maybe I'm wrong, I'm not Zoroastrian, but that was what I got from the course, and I was just blown away, that they look at fire that way as sacred. And that was like my starting to understand how elements are sacred and you can form relationships with them, Whereas a lot of occultists, over the years will try to control. And if you kind of do that, even in Wicca, it comes down to the intention. The intention, that's the key word. Because in Wicca, when you mix salt and water together, it becomes a purifying agent. So with that, it's you are in control of pouring those in there, but the idea is to approach these elements with reverence and gratefulness. And by doing that, working with them, you build a relationship with them, and you start to understand their properties a little more. And it will assist you, when further workings and will come up at different times in your practices. And I can express about that is how knowing how, like, when you're taking care of a fire and you're out in the woods, a lot of people just throw fires, throw wood on the fire, throw fuel on the fire. But to create a sacred fire, you build it a certain way with reverence of, the wood facing upwards to the heavens. So when the fire burns and the smoke burns, it goes up to the heavens. So your prayers that you give while you're lighting the fire will rise up to the heavens and can be heard. And so things like that, and building that kinship where, if you're caring for a fire, you'll kind of like get this feeling, how to move the log to make it burn brighter and things like that. And it might sound trivial, and why is that important? Well, when you're caring for an all-night fire and you've only got so much wood that's going to burn throughout the night, you have to regulate how that fire burns. So that, and again, that's considered controlling, but at the same token, you're listening to the fire from your heart and you're seeing it. And when it turns like a deep orange, you got to move it. Otherwise, it will start to simmer. And so things like that, it teaches you. And so that you can, keep warm throughout the night, or whatever ceremony that's happening, it can continue without being in the dark. So things like that is where it comes in, building that relationship. And it's more so a respect for the elements, that what you're working with was created by the divine. Going back to the Christian belief system, God created water, fire, earth, air, all of the elements. Fire is kind of a chemical reaction, but those chemicals that cause it to burn, that was all part of a creation too. So you got to think of it that way. And it changes your perspective on respect for yourself, even. How you respect other things is how you respect yourself and take care of yourself. So it becomes philosophical, as I was saying, philosophy. And so with that said, going back to Wicca, I studied with Wicca for about close to as a good 4 to 5 years, and I learned so much about the different path workings in Wicca, the different degree levels, but what I most learned about was evocations and invocations of the deities, which were, the Celtic deities, Bridget, Carriagewin, and Carnunos, and it even crossed over into other path workings like our pantheons, which was Hecate, is when I first met her, and other deities like Shiva and Shakti and Ganesha and Odin, and all these different gods and goddesses that what they were to those in Wicca were actual deities, but also they represented different currents of energy, which like they represented different things. Like Bridget is all about the forge, smith crafting, art, poetry, bard craft. She's also about a love and passion, and she's also about birth, mother, maiden, crone. And then you have Hecate, who is all about the will, the gnosis of carrying the torch through the darkness, reminding us that we have divinity in us, our spark, that fire from Zoroaster, that ignites the way, and that when things get rough, we're not alone, and so that's a example. And then Carnunos, the Green Man, representing life and death and nature, different aspects of the cunning craft working with the animals. From that you get like the whispers, like Pescatani Phil. I love Pescatani Phil. That's my birthday is February 2nd, so every time I hear Pescatani Phil, I'm like, all right, Groundhog's Day, But it's true. He wakes up, sees a shadow, or he's no longer afraid. He says, "You know what? Let's start spring." So it's very powerful from a groundhog. But in that, a lot of that element is the right hand path, external forces guiding us, and believing that we're not alone because they're with us, and that's a very powerful thing. It gives hope. It gives perspective. And then so from that, I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, and it was then back in 2003, late 2003, 2004, that I met a group of modern shamans, which it was my first meeting of alchemical magicians that worked with alchemy and the mysteries of alchemy and what that meant, not just on a physical level, but a spiritual level. And then I also met, like I was saying, shamans. The lady I met, Miss Sylvia Braille, she had a school there called Tantric Shamanism, and she was a student of many practices, Tantrika practices from India. And she had a school there that taught those practices of not necessarily like red tantra, but more so white or pink tantra, whereas more breath work and more pranayama yoga, workings of Mahayana Babaji, more which would be considered left-hand path, because you're awakening things within yourself by doing certain practices to awaken new perceptions, new consciousness, to expand consciousness, to connect to a higher level, and also she tied in shamanism, which was a more of like a relationship to all the elements in creation. So rather than like kind of like building a bridge between worlds, so to speak, between the plant kingdom, the winged kingdom, the understanding, all the elements. So it was, I loved it. It was a great time of learning different practices, learning Reiki, and learning different energetic ways to use energy, not just for, action, but for transformation. And other groups I met in Las Vegas, such as the Fire Tribe, many of them were the alchemical magicians, through going to some of their workshops, and then also I was also a member of Shadow Manor and Haven of Kindred Spirits. These were different occult groups that practice more of the darker side of spirituality at that point in my life. I didn't know what that meant, and a lot of them were mainly working through the shadow work, which is working through traumas, working through different aspects of things, but it would come across as representative of energy movements, of learning to use your energy for a gain for yourself and for your family. And so you would think, okay, why is that bad? Well, some of the practices were learning to overcome fears, weaknesses, as well as using your energy to elevate your consciousness. And that can be scary when having to face your fears and everything. So and then also, there was the whole aspect, there was a lot of people, and learning about, that was when Queen of the Damned and all those movies came out. So I was getting into the whole vampirism thing as an understanding of self and expression, and learning about how moving energy. And it's interesting. My teacher Sylvia would always talk about the law of exchange. In Reiki they talk about the law of exchange. And the law of exchange is basically, when someone pays you for a Reiki treatment, it's not for the treatment but for the time. It's basically an exchange. And in the groups that practiced vampirism, there was people that wanted to donate for love, compassion, partnership, and they would donate their energy and whatnot for that exchange. And it kind of blew away some people in the community that they saw the exchange as a vampiric act. And if you think about it, it kind of is. You're giving, your currency is, the energy you spent to get that currency. So that exchange, I know there's going to be a lot of naysayers on that one, but hey, that was the experience I had, and it was quite surreal. And I met some wonderful people, very creative people. All the members of the groups I've met in Vegas were just phenomenal. Lady Knight, Vampira, Ralph the Druid, rest in peace, and so many names to count. But Lady Adriana of House of Saint Germain from New Orleans, she had a big influence on many of us. Forever, I wish I could find her. She's an amazing woman. But certainly that, opened my doors, so to speak, to what the left-hand path could be. And I didn't see it that way at that time, because I was still working with shamanism, alchemy, and different practices that were on that border. And so from that point, there was a turning in my life, and separations from partners, and my partner at the time and I moved to Oregon because we wanted to change from the desert. And we had a separating divorce. And I won't go into that, but it, it led me down a different path after that moment of, as she was part of the coven I was part of in Austin. So it was a separation on multiple levels and a changing. And it was from there that I started, coming across different spiritual practices, of beliefs, of, finding out what's here. And I came across a group of, it was actually a Native American tribe that had a Tesmacall, which would be like a sweat lodge retreat, or it was like they had public ones. I mean, you had to, go on to their meetup, speak to them on the phone about what's your intentions, and it's going to be really hot, things like that, and go over protocols and guidelines, and then you could join one of their Tesmacall things and go to the retreat. So I did that, and it was very profound. It was the Twisted Raven Crow, I believe, tribe. But the fire shaman that led the ceremony, she had been following the same practices that were passed down for about 1,200 years. So the same calling to the 20 powers, the 20 divine beings that their tribes called down for 1,200 years. It was the same method, and it was very profound, very awakening, and so again, right hand path, but from a Native American perspective. It wasn't that it was so hot, heat wise, it was just energetically hot, and the understanding, how they did that was just beautiful, and to be a part of that, it was it inspired me to look into it more and go deeper into shamanism as I did before. So at that point, a lot of things transpired in my personal life, which I won't share on this channel, but as this topic is about my spiritual path working with the left hand, right hand path. But more so, I wanted to cover, from that point on, I returned back to Texas, and I met through a friend from high school, I met a group of neo shamans, USNT. This is a group that would bring in healers, shamans, and medicine men and women from South America to offer their plant medicine that they carry, that they have that relationship with. And some of the ceremonies I attended and began as a fire keeper, which that's where I talk about building that relationship with fire. The fire keeper pretty much keeps the fire going all night, is part of that ceremony at the same time. So pretty much you have to stay in between two worlds at the same time. One, you're in that spirit world with the plant medicine, and then on the other side, you're caring for fire, which is in earth. That one, can't go out, or two, can't burn too hot to where it causes a real fire, like a forest fire. So with that, many of the plant medicines were like ayahuasca, and combo, and bufo, and hape, as well as, which is tobacco, as well as yopo, which was all these plants come from South America, but they're very ayahuasca is considered the spirit plant. It releases the DMT, which DMT is what is released when you die into your brain, and it helps bridge that connection once you die to the spirit world. So ayahuasca, which is a blend of that medicine that we already have within us, it awakens you and creates that bridge. And then the shaman healer, he opens the door for you to go through whatever you need to go through to heal. And many of the taitas, and they call them taitas, but a taita is more like a padre or a father. And many of them were quite Christian. They believed in God, the creator. And so many ceremonies were very creator-based, like divine creator-based. And some of the other healers were, of different path workings. They worked with Shiva or Ganesha. They come from Indo-European, descent, or their practices. And so it was very interesting and that was considered more of a left-hand path, because you are working with a medicine to, one, heal yourself, work on yourself, as well as connect to the spirit world, to travel, to learn from celestial beings. And so that is considered both left and right, depending on the intention behind what you're doing. And because that's what it comes down to in those plant medicine ceremonies, is intention. Why are you taking this medicine? What is your intention? Where do you want to go with it? So it was in that place that I also came across some other tribes, like the Lakota would come and offer tesmicals, as well as peyote ceremonies, which were more so, which I learned was calling of the ancestors. Is basically the whole ceremony was a honor to the ancestors, our ancestors, calling to my own personal ancestors to come down to sing. Because as you would go through the night, they would pass around a water drum, and that each person had a chance to, sing as the drummer played. And that song was a song from their spirit to the ancestors. So it was quite beautiful. People think, oh, you did peyote, you must be some kind of druggie. And it's not even that. The whole intention and purpose is very sacred and very ceremonial for honoring your ancestors. And so it is very liberating. So I met that group, and then I also became friends with an Apache healer, William Two Feather. And he is, been all over the world doing his healings. He's a Vietnam vet. I mean, he's hardcore. He was he's one of the Rangers. He's he's got medals. I mean, he's an amazing guy, but he was also an amazing shaman and healer. And he had asked me to help him on multiple occasions to work on his clients, which needed help. And I saw so many miracles. One one healing was in the middle of a Harley David shop. The owner of the Harley David shop had asked him to get help to work on him. And this gentleman, the owner of the shop, he had been hopping around on his foot for years because of some injuries and some kind of he had some kind of bone issue that caused him to hop around. And so he had not walked around normal for years. And so he had asked William Two Feather to work on him, and I was asked to join to help. And in the middle of the Harley David shop on a massage table, we worked on this gentleman, and I watched Two Feather call in the doctors, the spirit doctors, to work through him, to help guide his hand, to help heal this gentleman. And after a good 45 minutes to an hour working on this gentleman, I saw him get off the table and walk normal. For the first time in probably half his life, he walked around without a hop. He was able to walk normal. And that blew both of us away. It was an amazing sight. And so things like that, and that is considered the right hand path, because calling for external forces for help. And so then you find yourself going, wow, okay, so there's a left hand, the right hand. So how does it become blended, become one? And again, it all comes down to intention. Now, there are pathworking and groups out there that, are left-hand path driven. Their left-hand path, their ideology is left-hand path. But to achieve what they want, they have to tap into the right-hand path, an external force, to gain that left-hand path. And what do I mean by that? So doing shadow work, there's groups out there like the Temple of Ascending Flame, Dragon Rouge, different spiritual groups that working with lower or darker entities and groups. And you're asking, why would you do that? Well, if you look at what the ruling force over those lower entities are, like the Qliphoth, which is considered Sitarachra, or what would be considered hell, is the casting place of all our fears, traumas, all aspects of ourselves that we discard into the unconscious. And those ruling forces over that unconscious, which is why, they say the rulers of hell rule earth, is because it's the ruling force of the unconscious. And so when you think of that, to be able to access those unconscious and the aspects of self, to grow, to overcome fear, traumas, you can do it two ways. You can go through a psychologist, therapist, and they will take you through these lower realms of the unconscious to retrieve it. Or you can work with these lower force entities to reclaim those aspects of self that of truth that you lost behind, or gifted away, or not gifted away, but you discarded to avoid pain. Because that's what happens when we experience trauma. We discard a piece of ourselves, and where does that piece go? Well, it goes into the unconscious. And who rules the unconscious? So again, going into working, and that's considered shadow work that I was talking about earlier. So people that want to better themselves, want to be a better person, a stronger person, that want to overcome limitations of self, you can't expect someone else to do that for you. So that's where the left-hand path is. But how do you gain access to those recessed regions of self? That's where the right-hand path comes in, working with those external forces. So that's where the middle path comes in, that you realize that the left-hand path, the right-hand path is all part of the one big ball. And some would even consider, the Qliphoth and Sephiroth is the conscious, Qliphoth is the unconscious. So the Sephiroth is the conscious spirit that is aware of not the ego, but the actual spirit that's connected with Creator, Source. And then you've got the unconscious, which is often, the shadow that's within us, that's connected to, the Qliphoth, which houses all those discarded aspects of ourselves, the lost treasures, as they say. And those lost treasures are actually pieces of us that we discarded because we don't want to feel pain. We feel shame or guilt. So we don't want to reclaim that piece of ourselves, because then we would be accountable. We'd be responsible. And why would we want to do that, right? So no, seriously. But seriously, that's why people do it. Because they want to be accountable. They want to be responsible. They want to have that deeper connection with Source. Because once you reclaim those shadows, they become light. They become brought into the consciousness. That Sephiroth gets expanded. The Qliphoth gets expanded because you are more yourself. You're more authentic to your spirit, their spirit's truth. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this video up. But in summary, you have the left-hand path that I can do it all myself. I don't need help. I'm a tough guy. I don't need a bucket. I got this. Or you can be the right-hand path. Yes. And honor and respect and reverence. And I didn't sing like that to mock, but more so, when you think of a choir, what are they doing? They're praying, they're singing their hymns to the heavens and reverence and glory and gratitude. So that is right-hand path. But in the midst of all of that, and who's to say who is right and wrong? Who is to say what is best for your spirit? So let me say this. Your relationship to God, Creator, Source, the lower denizens of hell, or the higher denizens of the heavens, or the gods of the earth, or the plants, animals, trees, as they would say, the winged ones, the standing ones, the four-legged, two-legged. Who's to say that your relationship, your personal relationship, that's you, that's your choice, that's your will. And with that, the middle path, you can follow a path of working on the self. It's actually healthy to work on yourself, It's actually healthy to work out and exercise your body. It's healthy to eat, foods that give you nutrition, not destroy you from the inside out. So there's many, having that left-hand path idea of, all about self-care, self-worth, self-value, self-driven, self-ambition, self-goals. Those are very powerful. But then with the right-hand path, honoring and respecting the greater creation, the greater source, as well as all that are, created within it. As above, so below. It's respected on high, respected on low. So you look at it like that way, then the middle path, and that's why my path is more so middle than left or right, because one, I am trying to take care of myself. I am trying to better myself for myself and my family, but I can't help my family if I can't help myself first. So I'm finding that balance of taking care of what I need to give greatness for my family, but at the same token, they always say, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything, right? If you're not breathing, how can you help other people? So you have to find that balance, which that's where the middle path comes in. But that is the summary I wanted to give from my experiences, and I hope it gave you some insights. Again, I do not try to persuade. My goal is to honor my teachers, honor my path, honor my passions, share my spirit's truth, safe travels always.